Hey, I'll be right back. Good. Hold on, yeah. So we've got 6 online. Fabulous.
Ooh, are you kidding me?
Stay on the whole time. Fabulous.
I should send you a link.
Try to make it. You doing that? Thanks for pulling this off, doing mine. Thank you, Joe. Very cool. Beautiful necklace there.
Thank
Yeah. Oh, yes, oh,
Thanks, it all wasn't for here.
right.
Mother's Day. Yes. I actually forgot how she told me that. No, she's like, that's not. Small. No, no.
We waiting on Evo at this point?
Yeah.
Oh. Sorry, guys.
And there you go. Yes, I'm not sure I've seen you turn that shade of red before.
Right. Hot in here.
Yeah, yeah. All right, Evo, where are you?
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Well, good morning, Barrett Real Estate. Oh, all right. So it's interesting. I've been self-employed since I was 14, right? And there's 2 different sides of the business industry. There's the creative guy who thinks he's the thought guy, the thinker guy, but the guy who actually does stuff, the desktop jockey, the contract negotiator. That's a whole other person. Like I like going out there and getting leads, but to regurgitate those leads, especially with the finances that we're involved with here, you need somebody who has that kind of duality going on there. So I've been self-employed since I can remember. And what I'm about to share with you is one of my greatest business secrets of all time. I can't believe I actually came across this guy. licensed since 1997. Let's give it up for PhD, Dr. Mike Searcy.
Thank you, thank you. One of the things that I want to do to get started with is kind of express a little bit about the idea that we capitalize on current cultural trends in the market all the time. And I will tell you, Burke Smashmeyer, who you just heard from a moment ago, is the co-founder of Snowbird Nation, which is a real estate team, as of this last month, brokered by Barrett Real Estate. We have just recently moved over. And we were over at the Evil Empire before that. Having said that, I also want to say that he's also the guy that's looking at some of the creativity stuff, and we're going to actually show you, kind of start off a little bit lighthearted before we get into some a little bit more heavy stuff with the most recent, just came out like yesterday, the most recent video commercial that Brooks had put together through our marketing company.
This is when you take multi-million-dollar listing mentality to a $500,000 home, right?
Features are told, how we celebrate our kitchen home, how we go around it's all the way more. You said that you want upgrade 20. But to so no big deal. I want I myself, I love walking around. Barking smart, it won't get too far. Colors required for running stage. Down. Street. It's the heart of that word. If I could say aloud this thing, what would I say to send it by your stand? They understand that they don't everything. Right sellers, sick of waiting, ready to stay. My questions and get some answers. What they're I say, what's the word? The house. What's that word? Part of that.
We are the premier choice in Arizona. Snowbird Nation, brokered by Barrett Real Estate. SnowbirdNation.us.
No, I need to make a video like that.
Now you need to make a video.
You think she'll let me borrow that outfit?
Just like,
Right?
I'm not sure it's your size. Not sure it's your size.
Frank asked that same question.
Right. Did. Good. We need to have a talk. All right, so before we get, I gotta get this going first, apparently. There we are. Today, what we want to talk about is winning contracts in a variable market. One of the things that tells me, there's a couple of things that tell me that we are in a variable market today is our last two offers that we've got in escrow. One just closed yesterday and one is in escrow getting ready to close. One buyer, one seller in particular that I want to talk about. The first one is the sale. We got a listing here in Santan that we listed for $342,500. This was only 30 days ago, 35 days ago. We listed it for $32,500, and I will tell you all truth be told, we anticipated a potential appraisal value of approximately $350,000 to $360,000. But what we wanted to do, based on some of the anecdotal evidence that we were looking at, is we wanted to see whether or not the seller's market of 2021, late 2021 into 2022, was starting to have a little bit of edging back into the market, because we started to see some anecdotal signs that might be the case. So what we did is we actually listed the property a little bit lower than what we anticipated the sale would be, to see if the market would actually kind of bring that kind of fervor and fury to the contracts themselves. And the answer to that question is it did. We wound up with over a dozen offers on that property, as high as $385,000. And what we finally accepted on that particular property was an offer that was $375,000 with a $10,000 appraisal shortfall contingency. Basically meaning if it didn't appraise for $375,000, then they were going to pitch in up to $10,000 to cover whatever the difference was between the appraisal price and the contract price. Interesting to note, the lender gave them an appraisal waiver on it. They didn't even have to do the appraisal. They just went in at $375,000. The bank just said, yep, looks good to us, and they took it. That tells us that we're potentially in a seller's market. Yet, we have a buyer under contract right now that we're working our way through escrow, who looked at a house, and this is probably on the east side of Phoenix, Tempe, east side of Phoenix, that the house was listed at $500,000. Knowing what we know about the listing we just dealt with, we were doing some prep work with the buyers to try and say, well, we may have a battle on our hands. And in such, what we wound up doing is we actually even put in an escalation clause up to $510,000. They didn't have any extra cash to put on any appraisal buffer, any appraisal waivers, anything like this, because we have to, and we're going to talk in a little while about what are the things we need to know that's going to allow us to arm ourselves to prepare for whatever battle we're walking into with respect to the negotiation. So we even went in with an escalation clause up to $510,000. And this is where I'm saying I would say that anecdotally, we are in a variable market. End result, this was a VA loan, which means there's not a whole lot of play we can do with a VA loan. Not a whole lot of frills and extra things we can add on. We got that property under contract and in escrow for $489,000. Remember I said we went an escalation clause where we went in at $489,000. So we got that one for actually less than list price, and we were in a multiple contract offer situation. So what we're basically saying here is, number one, it's not all about money. And number two, there are lots of things we have to do to assess the market to kind of figure out what our negotiation strategies ought to be. To that end, how do we figure out the market itself And I'm going to, by way of introduction, I want to pop into this right here. This is one of those things we use specifically to try and gauge the market very regularly. Those of you that are not familiar with this are going to become familiar with it in about 10 to 15 seconds as I introduce you right now to one of our team resources that we have used for, I'm thinking going on 5 years now, 4 years. Debbie Rogers is here with Lawyer's Title. She is one of our resources and go-to, and she's also one of the people that we rely on heavily in this respect. And Altos reports is what we call these. If you're not getting them, you need to, for whatever zip code you're specifically working on. Because when I say that you need to have a handle on the market, a lot of the people that are asking you about the market are going to ask, how do you know? And it's one thing to go ahead and say, here are the stories of the deals I've heard about and I've dealt with. It's quite another thing to actually have data and research backing you. That's where this comes in. This is Debbie Rogers with Lawyer's Title, who is also, sorry for those of you who are on Zoom, but Debbie's here, also one of the 2 people responsible for your lunch today, free after today's session.
Good morning, Debbie Rogers, Lawyer's Title. I've been in the business 36 years this year, and I still love it. Always been on the sales and marketing side, never escrow. God love those people. I don't know how they do it, but I have a lot of tools, like a ton of tools. So one of them is Altos reports. Now, this is called an open house launch kit. We just came out with these a few months ago. They're really nice. You send me the address and the price point of the listing, and I order this up for you. Basically, what comes in it is the listing kit. Now, I got to tell you, it's a funny story. When we first ordered these, our 3-ring binders that these normally come in didn't quite fit. But I just recently got a new one, so they must have ordered bigger boxes. They're starting to come out in the 3-ring binders. But basically, this is the listing kit. So it's everything of record about the house, including CC&Rs. We always add those in there. So again, it's just to make you look like a rock star on that listing appointment or the open house. Also comes the open house. Hey, the seller would really love your feedback. And then, oh, I'd love to stay in touch with you. And these are free, by the way. And then we also have, like, the please welcome sign. I'm part of the Tom Ferry coaching program, so I stole this from him a long time ago. I'm allowed because I pay for the coaching fee. Here's another one. Choose. Welcome to our open house. That's another wonderful tool that I love. I had been adding these to my open house kits before we came out with this official launch kit. This is one of the tools inside of our app. And it's basically where you put the address in and it rips out all this information around that house. So if somebody's coming in from Colorado to your open house and they're not familiar with where's the restaurants, the stores, the Starbucks, it even shows a walk score, a sound score, and an internet speed for that house. So it's pretty cool. It has all the schools and all that. And then we come with a stack of these Altos reports. What I love about these are, and I can't see up close, so I have to put my glasses out. So this one happens to be Gilbert, Arizona 85234. And it's basically real estate market profile information. So it's the median list price and then a bunch of breakdowns of price and inventory, median rent, et cetera. Then it says market action index, which is 67. So as you can see on that chart, so if 30% is even buyer to seller, anything above 30 is seller, anything below is no, seller, buyer is on the low side. Then it shows a 7-day rolling average and a 90-day rolling average for that zip code. And then it breaks it down by quarters. So you're comparing 3246 square feet to 149 square feet. So it shows them bedroom, bath, age. So it's a great tool to get other listings in that neighborhood if they come by and say, hey, you know, I live in a. So it tells them how many days on market and stuff like that. So it's just a great way to keep your name and face out there, educate people about what's going on in that neighborhood, and they come out weekly. So if you wanted it for any number of zip codes, like you said, I'll email them to you. You can post them, use them in the neighborhood. I'll print them for this market, you know, packet here. Also in here, we have a old-fashioned guest registry. Then we also put in here, and we customize them to you. It's kind of an buyer-seller guide. So it's just different things that are gonna happen when they're buying in Arizona. Who pays what, WTF, wire transfer fraud. You know, just different things like all about Arizona. Now I have to tell you, we have another buyer and seller guide that are separate that has the contract in it. These don't happen to have it, so if you want those, I'd order them separate. But again, we brand them all for you for nothing. So that's our open house launch kit. Then I gave you some samples of, this is our app. How many of you have been in the business like a really long time? Anybody? Like a really long time? Like me, 36 years? Well, not that long. Well, I guess you have.
My first license was 1997,
Okay.
before
Okay.
most of the people in this room were born.
Right. So back in the olden days, you used to have to ask your escrow, can you whip me up a settlement statement, whatever. Now we have this app. So it's wonderful because it has our escrow fee, our title fees, property taxes, insurance percentages, commissions, lender costs. And all you do is put in a couple of figures and it rattles out all the breakdown of the cost for you. That's just like the cover sheet. And I can sit down and show you all the wonderful things this app does. This is just a sample of, one of the templates that you can email, text, social media, wherever you want to send it, of a breakdown of the costs. And then I love this one, even though iBuyers aren't a big thing right now, they always seem to come back in, right? So let's just say you had a friend that says, oh gosh, Bob, I love you, OfferPad, because they make it so easy, right? So this is if I was going to list my house with you. This is if I was going to go with OfferPad. So here's 600,000. They offer 564. My payoff is 350. Closing costs 85.42. Closing cost for them a little bit less. Commissions 36,000. On the commission side with them, they always say, "Oh, we don't charge a commission," but they charge a service fee or a convenience fee. That's in the next line down, and it's always way more than your commission. Then the next line is repairs. It puts a buffer in there of 1,500. You can knock it out, but there's always a little thing when you're selling. They're always going to come back in that inspection period and say, "Hey, Deb, your air conditioners are really old," which mine are. They're from 1999, still working. Please God, one more summer. Anyway, they're going to hit me a lot harder, right? Then holding costs, in case I had to list it like an entire month, they're going to flip it faster. But look what I'd net working with you as an agent, 201,000 versus them 154. So what's the cost of convenience? About 46,000. People don't even realize it until they're way into the deal. How they can't cancel because they're gonna get sued, right? So just putting stuff like this out on social media or educating people, like, whoa, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of house management. And then the last one is, again, that piece that I showed you. So a ton of tools, a ton of tools. I just was going to share a couple because I talk all day. So we appreciate your business. If I can do anything to help you, I'm a notary. I actually went to jail for him last year, for them last year.
True story. True story.
Never been in a jail in my life. They go, you're like, we're not in Kansas anymore. It was
The market got really low, guys. Really low. We had to sell.
yeah, it was a freaky deal, but you know what? We did it. We closed it. And then 2 weeks later, I had an agent, a different agent. She calls me up. She goes, "I got to ask you a really quick question. You've gone to jail to do a signing before?" And I go, "Well, as a matter of fact, yeah, 2 weeks ago." And it was a situation where the husband got put in jail. So he had to do a power of attorney for the wife, and we closed that one too. So it's just kind of fun, this business. You just never know, where you're going. I've done some deathbed signings, but you know what? It's about lives and helping them get to the next step, So we appreciate your business and
Thank you. So real briefly, and I'm just gonna go ahead and follow that up. No, she didn't go serve any time,
no,
not per se.
never.
But we did have a power of attorney issue that there was another title company didn't care for our power of attorney and basically told us they wouldn't open escrow and deal with it. We asked Deb if she would deal with it, and Lawyers Title's response was, and I will appreciate that to this day, it's our job to open escrow, then help you figure out your problems. That's exactly what they did, and figure out those problems. Deb actually had to call a bunch of times because this was also during the pandemic time.
Yeah.
And the jail was locked down and we had a contract that needed to go into escrow. She goes to jail to basically get calls a bunch of favors in with other people she knows, gets into the jail to get this guy to sign the note, the power of attorney,
Yeah.
so she can notarize it in their presence, et cetera, under armed guards and
It was
and
great.
the whole thing was just, amazing. So when we say, will your title company and contract negotiation often talk about due diligence. Due diligence period basically means I've got so many days. Now the contract has a 10-day auto clause in there, right? That you can adjust and you can change, but there's a 10-day expectation. If you're in a multiple contract situation, one of the things we often try to do is we try to see if it's even remotely possible to bring the number of those days down. Now, there's a lot of things we want to check in terms of due diligence, especially if there's HOA rules involved, if there are other city CCNRs or things like this that are going to potentially block your way for running a home business or something that you want to do with the property. But you also want to deal with property inspections. Well, I will tell you that it's one of those things that we are really, really concerned about. If we're going to drop the due diligence to 5 business days, 5 days, 3 days, something like this, especially if we need to be able to move quickly, you better have a really, really good property inspector and inspection company on speed dial, if there is such a thing as speed dial anymore, or you need to have somebody who's going to answer their phone and not and I will tell you, I have a personal avoidance of those companies that say just schedule it through the website. I don't do that. I won't do that because we are in need of, if we're going to be all in contract compliance, it actually needs to be the buyer who is officially scheduling the inspections at all, right? Because there have been times where, in the state of Arizona, where the realtor said, I'm going to do that for you, calls the inspector, schedules the inspection. Realtor didn't know, nor did the inspector know that the inspector's license expired. Issues arrived. Buyer found out the inspector didn't have their license all figured out. And the realtor got in some serious trouble as well because they scheduled it with somebody who wasn't officially licensed. Now, to that end, if you're going to drop any of those due diligence periods, you need to have an inspector and a company you can call. And so also sponsoring today, Jimmy John's, I'm not, Jersey Mike's. Jersey Mike's, did I say Jimmy John's earlier too? I don't know. It's Jersey Mike's. It's all the same, right?
Sandwich is a sandwich.
The sandwich is a sandwich. I'm sure that. How do you?
Realtor's just a realtor.
I was going to say, Evo, how did you respond to the person who says that about real estate agents? So anyway, Joe Worthy is here with Foundations Up Inspections, and I have to actually focus and concentrate to remember it's actually called Foundations Up Inspections, because we just know them as effed up inspections. But I will tell you, they are absolutely fabulous, and they answer their phone. They get their reports back to us in a very, very timely fashion. And if I need something done because we're trying to drop the due diligence, I can call them and say, look, you got somebody can get in there tomorrow, somebody can get in there 2 days, whatever it might be. And they respond as fast as they can to us, and they work the entire valley. In fact, I think he went to Prescott for us once. And so they do not have a problem going far distances, from the valley to do what they need to do. Joe, do you want to say a couple of words?
Hey everybody, I'm Joe with Foundation Up Home Services. I'm the owner of that branch. We also have another branch, Precision Property Inspections. I just merged with them last August. They actually cover my West Valley. Mike says, yes, we do cover a very large area. So next week I'm going to Casa Grande. Tomorrow's Mesa. I have an inspector that goes all the way up to Sedona, said to leave and go to Flagstaff, but we haven't had anybody up there yet. So we've got the whole valley covered. As Mike was saying, we understand the 3-day inspection period. We know that right now, well, it was, and it's still in that way, very competitive, trying to get a contract. So we are very familiar with the 3-day inspection period. I have 4 of us that do inspections, and we have pretty much open availability. Matter of fact, I just sat right back there while Mike was talking. I scheduled 2 inspections. So I've got people for it. We're all available. Through my phone up until 9 o'clock, and Mike and I joke about all the time. I've got goals, so I'm going to meet my goals, and that the only way I'm going to do that is by getting an inspection. So I will be on the phone. Again, multi-inspector, veteran owned. Our goal is to make sure that when we leave that house, buyers are still buying. Not there to scare them. When you give them everything they need to know about that house, we're going to educate them, and then we're going to leave on a good note, congratulating them on their new home. Whether it's a new home, so new build, repurchase, or whatever the scenario might be, we got it covered. You guys want to cover?
I think we're good.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you.
What's that?
Yes.
Let me go back there.
Awesome. Pick up a sandwich and his business card. And then as anytime you ever eat another sandwich at Jimmy John's or Jersey Mike's, they're all the same. You're gonna obviously remember, foundations up and inspect. Okay. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Mike Searcy. I am a real life PhD. That basically means I've got a lot more time in a classroom than the average person. I have a PhD from the University of Iowa in communication studies that deals a lot with interpersonal communication, negotiation, persuasion, media, and broadcasting. To that end, I've also spent a little bit of time teaching both graduate school and undergraduate schools and community colleges and trade schools and the like at places like the University of Iowa, the University of Illinois, the University of Hawaii, 2 universities in Saudi Arabia, university in China, and then probably my most recent last full-time gig was as the chair of a communication department in Southern Kentucky. And so I spent some time doing all of that while at the same time running around the country, doing a lot of facilitation of training, 1, 2, 3-day workshops and the like for most of the federal government alphabet agencies. If you could spell it in the federal government, I've probably trained them at one point or another. And then also large corporations and the like. So I've got a lot of time in training and actually learning about best practices. And I spent an awful lot of time doing advanced training with negotiations, persuasion, and contract management. And that's partly why we're looking at today's topic specific. About 2017, the state of Kentucky had budget problems. And with the stroke of a pen, they let 500 of their teachers go across the entire state. I got caught up in that. While I say I was licensed, and my first real estate license was 1997, I will tell you that probably about that the time of 2017, I kicked that into a lot higher gear because it was no longer a part-time gig for me. So I looked at, aside from doing a number of other things, I actually looked at the market across the United States because I was in Kentucky. I'm headquartered with my family in Chicago, in the Chicago market. And I was looking at the real estate market around the country, and I'm looking at going, where's the hottest real estate market out there right now? All pun intended, Maricopa County. And so I packed a bag and flew out here in 2018. And I took the 2-week Arizona course at the ASREB in Glendale. And that Saturday in between that 2-week course, I took the contract management course at the ASREB in Scottsdale. And the Saturday after the 2-week course, took the school exam. Then I had to fly out because I was still doing some training for all those alphabet agencies of the federal government. I flew back in, took the exam for the state and dropped my license at one of the competitor companies here in the Valley. Flew back, came back, drove out here at the beginning of 2019 or so, and throughout 2019, not knowing a soul in the Valley, not having a place to live, actually slept in my Toyota 4Runner. I had a 2006 Toyota 4Runner. Slept in my Toyota 4Runner. You can put a camping cot in the back of that sucker, by the way. For about 6 to 8 months. I sold 15 houses. All buyers. And just hustled my tail off. And everyone kept saying to me, there are more real estate agents than there are people in the population in Maricopa County. What is it you think you can do? And I kept looking at him going, not one of them is Mike Searcy. And it was when I arrived here, one of the first things I did was to put my resource team together because I was taking it very seriously. That's when I met Debbie Rogers. Shortly thereafter is when I met Joe Worthy. So these are two individuals that have been on our resource team from almost the very beginning. And we've got others as well, of course, but selling 15 houses meant being very good at doing what? Not knowing a soul in the Valley, no sphere of influence. So it meant I was doing about 40 hours a week in open houses. I was doing, and while I was doing, and Brooks Matchmeyer has a saying when we used to do a lot of open houses even together, Brooks Matchmeyer is saying is we work from home, just not our own. And so one of the things we would constantly do, if nobody showed up at the houses, we're on the phone. We're just dialing. And for those of you that don't know, a lot out of those 15, half of those came from realtor.com leads. And you have to have a very unique and specialized approach to be able to close a realtor.com because everybody's calling you realtor.com. So we did an awful lot of work with that. How do you get those deals to actually go? Because the following year, as many of you well know, we just slammed into a seller's market. Gunned into a seller's market. So we went from being potentially a balanced market. I'm not going to say it was a buyer's market, potentially a balanced market to a seller's market. We kind of swung that pendulum back a little bit. And now we're kind of in a variable market, which is why I'm also saying, if you're not getting out those reports, you better get on the horn with Deb right away, because you're going to need to be able to track the markets you're specifically working in so you know what you're looking at. All right. Enough of that at this point. Okay. Let's start with a bit of mindset. Information is power. Only if you can take action with it. Then and only then does it represent knowledge and consequently power. If you're not familiar with Daniel Burrus, I'm going to suggest that you look him up. Daniel Burrus is one of those people that we would call a disruptor author. He's on New York Times bestseller list, and his stuff's all about disruption. Now, not unlike what Barrett's doing, right? For those of you that have paid real close attention to what Barrett is, you know that you came here because Barrett has something unique and special that isn't actually being offered anywhere else. That's why we picked up our whole team from one of the evil empires and brought it over. Okay, so I am going to go on and take that one step further. And here's the kicker. The act of taking action with information, and information is key. The act of taking action with information. Wow. Was not good, was it? So as to represent knowledge and power is the act of strategic communication. I've spent my entire career educating people on strategic communication, how, why, and what's the outcome. And that's basically what we're looking at focusing on today. Arm yourself. We arm ourselves with knowledge. We arm ourselves with information. Discovery. Discovery is so important that you have to be able to know what's in your arsenal. And then you also have to know what's in the arsenal of the other side. You know, who you battling with or against. But remember, there are 7 fiduciary duties, right, that you're responsible for to all of your clients. Some of you new people are going, what are those again? And some of you older people are going, I don't remember those at all. And that's okay. You know, because when you don't remember them, it means I get to actually take clients from you. I'm kidding. But I will tell you, I have done so based on that. When people say to me, you know, when we go into this with our team, Snowbird Nation, you know, we train people to go, we'll take you through the house. Remember realtor.com leads? You show them the house and you're standing out in the driveway and they say to you, okay, I'm going to go call my realtor. You have a realtor? Well, yes. How do you know? Now they're looking at you really strange, really funny. You have a realtor? How do you know? Well, my realtor has got me on an email list. They're sending me links. They're sending me this, that, and everything else. Okay. For a while, on my business card, I had all 7 fiduciary duties listed on my business card. And I would pick them up, I would pull out my pocket, my business card, and I'd hand it to the potential customer. You know, did you sign anything with your realtor? You have to ask that question, right? Did you sign anything with your, and they don't know if they did or not half the time with these electronic signing things. And I'll hand them the business card and I'll say, you know, and I've reordered the 7 fiduciary duties, advocacy first and foremost, advocacy first. Not, you know, not carload, stand, right. So advocacy first, foremost. And they'll be on there. I say, I'll ask the people, do you trust your realtor the same way you trust your accountant? Same way you trust your attorney? The same way. I'm not saying I am your attorney and I'm not saying I am your accountant. Don't ever get caught in that trap. And they're going to say, no, what do you mean? They trust their realtor the same way they trust the stereotypical used car salesman. And so I'll look at them and go, okay, I see what you're saying. If you don't trust your realtor that way, you know, I want you to question what you're doing when you say you have a realtor, because these are the legally, these are the duties we owe you. We all learned this in realtor school, right? You all learned this when you took to prepare for the real estate exam. And so I'm looking at that and I'm handing it to them and I'm saying, and I'll advocacy, confidentiality, loyalty, accountability. You know these things, you remember these things. And I'll say to them, on your way home, thanks for looking at the house. On your way home, I'm going to challenge you to do one thing. I want you to call your realtor. And I want you to ask them, what are the 7 duties? In fact, let me get, forget that I just said 7. Yes, this is a script I'm giving you. Forget that I just said 7. Ask them for 3. Ask them if they can name 3 of the duties that they owe you legally. The vast majority of agents, if they make that phone call, the vast majority of agents are going to call me back and say and report to me when their agent couldn't name any of them. Well, my agent said my job legally is to cover your ass. What? Where is that in the Arizona statutes? Just saying. Does not say anywhere in there. Real estate agent duty number 1: cover client ass. It's not there. And so, or they'll make up some other phrases similar to that. Most people don't remember them. They studied them for the exam, they learned them for the exam, and they promptly forgot them. If you actually make a point of remembering them and using them, I guarantee you will put yourself a level above most other agents when you're dealing with people. So what I will tell these people, these potential clients, I want you to call your realtor and I want you to ask them if they can name 3. If they can't name 3, you don't really have a realtor. You might want to give me a call. And I will tell you, if they didn't sign exclusive buyer broker agreements prior to that, they're signing one with me within a few hours after. So when we talk about how was I actually getting those clients? You know, you can get realtor.com leads out to go see a house. Question is, what do you do with them then? I'm gonna go talk to my realtor. You have a realtor? How do you know? Well, you know, it's my uncle. You know, it's my aunt. You know, it's my ex-roommate's best friend's cousin's mother. You know, it's that dead person in the graveyard, because I understand some of them still have real estate licenses. I'm kidding. But at the same time, they're going to name some sort of a realtor that they feel obligated to based on blood relation of some kind, right? And I'm going to go, do you want to have that conversation every Thanksgiving? Tell you what, if, you know, you might have a talk with that person if they're willing to let me help you because you like me, for example. You trust me, for example. I'm going to tell you that every Thanksgiving, you can do one of two things. Every time you get together with that person, because you'll never hear the story. How do you want the story to go is the question. You want it to go, I hate you because we did not have a great relationship, meaning you're a realtor relative, or you're going to have them lord it over you every year, or you're going to have them basically tell us that, hey, isn't it so great? You, because I'm going to give them a referral, so they'll believe they handed me to you, right? Isn't it so great you gave me Mike? Because he was such a great realtor. I mean, I commend you for it. Or if the transaction doesn't go the way you really want it, wouldn't you rather, God, that was a horrible guy. What a horror. And now you're on the same side for the next few decades about how horrible your realtor was. Does that work? Not as often as the other one, because sometimes it's hard to break those blood connections, right? So, so that's what we're looking at. Discovery and education. Buyers. Do you have a buyer's interview whenever you pick up a buyer, or are you just grabbing them and going? What's their comfort level in terms of purchase? What's their comfort level in terms of loan? There's a difference we know between the comfort level of what they feel comfortable paying on something and what the lender tells them they can spend. Have they gone through all the numbers? If they haven't gone through all the numbers, you better get down with that lender and that buyer and do that so you can find their comfort level, because the last thing you want to do is have them blame you for getting them into a house they can't afford. You want to build ambassadors. You don't want to build people who are upset with you, because that can do more harm than good. So the buyers. Discovery and education. When I was at the University of Hawaii teaching there was a term they used, and it's up here on the screen. Talk story. Love that phrase. I'm going to go talk story with that person. The idea of talk story is the idea of, let's sit down and have coffee. Let's sit down and chat. Let's sit down and network. Let's sit down and socialize. Let's sit down and mingle. Let's have a conversation. Talk story. So we would act, if somebody wanted to go for coffee, they'd say, hey, you want to go to Starbucks and talk story? What a great phrase. Because you should be doing this with the buyers. And you should be doing this with the listing agents if you're representing those buyers. There's an awful lot you can learn from a listing agent about the sellers, that they're oftentimes, they're going to go, it's not on you to point out listing agent, for example, that they're actually blowing confidentiality requirements to their clients. Actually doing your job by dragging it out, right? It's actually doing your job. That's exactly right. Top story. Ask questions. Ask questions. So, Mr. or Miss selling agent, listing agent, can you tell me how many offers you have? They should be able to tell you that. All right, great. Can you tell me what your highest offer currently is? We'll talk about that in a couple of moments. There it goes again. All right, so we want to talk story because what we're doing is we're pulling information. We want to discover information. Advocacy does not have to be confrontational, but advocacy also means doing as much due diligence as you possibly can to get armed with all the knowledge and all the information you possibly can to put your client at its highest advantage. And that's what we're trying to do here with Top Story. Expectation management. Now, I know some of you will agree with me in this and find this making perfect sense when I say the majority of all transactions in contract management and negotiation is all about expectation management. Can you manage the expectations of the person you're talking to and with and trying to be the guide for? So, as an example, when I send this contract to the seller's representative, you of course do realize, because I've explained it to you previously, that this contract has three possible outcomes. They're going to accept it outright, just sign it, send it back to us. They're going to counter it. And they're going to say, well, we don't like your terms, but here are some terms that we think you might be able to do or not be able to do, or whatever it might be. But here's some other terms that are acceptable to us. And could they be the exact same terms on the MLS and the list price and everything? Sure, they could be. They're not moving an inch. That's fine. But what you're doing is you're getting a counter offer, or they can reject it outright. Does that mean you can't actually go and send another offer entirely? No, it doesn't mean that at all. But it does mean we've got some decisions to make when that happens. No panicking involved. Just here's what happened. We've talked about the actual choices that they could make, and now we need to figure out what our counter choices are. What are our next behavioral moves? Because you have to remember that we always need a plan B. What's the most important skill for any real estate agent? What's that?
No problem.
Critical problem solving. That's exactly correct. You must be on Snowbird Nation. So critical problem solving. When we ask realtors, why did you get in the business? And they say, I like people and I like houses. That's a realtor who's going to not probably be a realtor by the end of their first expiration of their license. Critical problem solving. If you can't figure out, I'm managing expectations. Here's what's going to happen. One of these outcomes, we know it. So let's prepare the client in advance. These are the outcomes that are going to happen. So when I make another phone call saying, here's what happened, nobody's shocked. Nobody's freaking out. Like, okay, we already talked about this. Same concept when we go ahead and put a BINSR, the repair request list together that we're going to send to the seller after the inspection. After you've had that talk with Joe, said, Joe, it was a bad negotiation. We're a lot higher in price than we need to be. I need you to burn this house down. I'm kidding, Joe. Joe wouldn't do that either. Anyway, there's ethics involved there too. I'm going to say, let's look at what we got in the inspection. Now, here are the things that we want to look at. And I will already say, Joe's going to give us, and most inspection companies will, they're going to give us a summary report, and they're going to give us a full report. And I will tell the buyers up front, I don't ever read the full report unless you tell me there's something in it you want me to look at. I will review the summary report. 2 years ago, we did over 120 deals on that year alone. I'm not reading all these full reports for the inspection. However, what I am going to do is I'm going to look through there and I'm going to say, look, you saw the house, you know the condition it's in for the most part. I said, the summary report is going to cover all those latent defects, a lot of them anyway, the ones that are within ability for us to detect within an inspection. It's going to cover anything, and I'm going to be paying attention to structural, health, safety, and environmental stuff. I'm going to be paying attention to those things that are probably flagged, and in at least in Joe's case, flagged in red. That's what I'm looking at specifically, flagged in red. Stop here, look at this, I got a problem. Now, is it a problem we can fix? Is it a problem we can't? So we're going to put this list on, we're going to look at that and decide how we're going to approach it. Now, I want you to look at that full report. That's your to-do list for the next 3 years. That's your to-do list. So, when you come to me within the next 3 years and say, I'm ready to list this house, I'm going to say, where's your inspection report? Tell me which ones you didn't do yet. Because that's your to-do list to prep the house for the next sale, or to prep it for you to be most happy with it. So same thing we're going to do. We're going to take that BINSR, we call it, buyer's notification, seller's response, right? So we're going to take that inspection report. We're going to put in there our repair request list. We're going to send it to the seller's representative. Same thing. I need you to have this discussion, buyer. Should they choose to reject it outright? What's our next move? You ready to go forward with it regardless? Or, you know, are you basically telling me they're gonna need to come this far for you to continue moving forward? Because once this happens, these are the choices they're gonna make. Let's talk in advance what we're gonna do. Expectation management. Almost all of the negotiation process is all about expectation management. Supply and demand. Supply and demand. Let's talk economics, right? Here's the simple truth. Most of the United States right now, there aren't enough houses currently built for everybody who wants one. That means supply is low, the demand is high, and depending upon what financing choices are made available to us and what kind of cash buyers we're competing against with financing choices, there are issues involved. And there's a lot of variables in there. But when the supply is low and the demand is high, that's where we wind up getting multiple offer scenarios. So what are we going to do to make sure that we're actually able to compete in those scenarios? Because it's not always about the money. So we got to know the playbook. So what is that playbook? Smoke and mirrors, number one. Smoke and mirrors. So I often tell my buyers, go to your lender and get the highest pre-qualification that you're able to. The high, whatever, I said, we'll talk about what your comfort level is, and then we'll talk about, you know, what the lender's able to give you, but get 2 pre-quals if you can, one for your comfort level and one for the highest possible that they're going to give you. Because then we're going to go ahead and look at the properties that are available to us, and we're going to actually, when we do our due diligence, we never ever look at list price. I mean, we look at list price to kind of figure whether or not we're in the range, but we don't look at list price when we're ready to write an offer. I'm going to look at that property and I'm going to do a valuation report on that property as if you were the seller coming to me and asking me to suggest a price for it. Because we want to know whether or not that property is way overvalued, way undervalued. Because if it's way undervalued, what are they doing? Same thing we've done. Remember, we just talked a little while ago about that 342.5 that we currently have closed yesterday at 375. We listed it low on purpose because we wanted to see what if the seller's market, if there's still characteristics of the seller's market still out there. And so same thing we've done. So that basically means that we want to get the highest price possible. If you don't have, if the buyers, because we know what the buyer's position is, we don't have a lot of bankroll. We need to know what we're armed with. What we are armed with is income capacity for a certain loan amount. So I'm going to possibly go in after I've done an evaluation of the property. And I had one in this last go round where we got, I told you we had a dozen offers on this one in Santan. And we listed at 342.5. We sold it at 375, but I had the highest offer I had went exactly this way, what I'm calling smoke and mirrors. Smoke and mirrors. I had an offer at 385. Why is it smoke and mirrors? Because they didn't waive the appraisal. And it was an FHA loan. It's a great move. It wasn't the winning move, but it could have been. Because what they're basically saying, what the buyer's agent is basically saying, and when you're talking story with the actual listing agent, you're even going in and saying, look, this is the deal. My buyers, and here's who they are, and they're really deserving of this property, tell them backstory. Because most people, you know, there's a lot of agents that aren't taking love letters now and stuff like that, because that can wind up being real problematic with discrimination issues now and fair housing issues now. But nothing stops you from doing the kind of, look, both my buyer and my seller, one's a nurse, one's a police officer. They've both been on the front lines of this pandemic for the last year and a half. Believe it or not, they've been living in the garage that was turned into a makeshift casita at their parents' location. And they haven't had the opportunity to move or to actually get their own house because they've been that busy as essential personnel for so long. Tell the story. Elicit the empathy of the listing agent, because if you can get the listing agent on your side, you're halfway there. Because here's the thing, there's an awful lot of agents out there who just came out of school. Pay attention. Awful lot of agents out there who just came out of school who learned how to fill in the blanks in a contract, and they do so, and then they send it to transaction desk and just send it over. and thinking they did their due diligence. And very little chance that's getting accepted. Very little chance. So what you need to do is you need to call and make some kind of connection with that listing agent. Number one, smoke and mirrors, right? Look, it's 385. And I'll tell them as listing agent, look, I don't anticipate this thing actually appraising higher than 365. So what are they saying? What they're saying, the argument that they're making in that particular statement is, with the number statement is, my buyers really want this house and they're very deserving. They just have the financial capacity to throw extra cash at it, but they're willing to give you whatever dollar up to their highest pre-qual number, whatever it'll appraise for, it's yours. That's a heck of a statement. And it would have been the winning statement had we not had somebody, you know, and the buyers at that point, or the sellers at that point, wanting a little bit more of a guarantee of cash. That actually came in as number 2. So if there was one other group, you know, one particular group that didn't put in a particular offer, that would have won out. Because that statement means a lot. All right, number 2, earnest money. Again, playbook, earnest money. How much and at what risk are the big questions. How much and at what risk? Because there's a lot of things in the Arizona contract that protect the buyer's earnest money for the buyer. So if you're in a multiple offer scenario, and the only way you're going to know that is if you call the listing agent, top story. Got to communicate. How are you communicating? All 3 ways. Call, text, email. And the same, be consistent on what information you're supplying with all 3. And if you actually talk to them on the phone, send the text and email as well anyway. Support yourself, back it up. And I will tell you that there are generations out there today that don't seem to think picking up the phone and making a phone call is worthwhile. Those agents are losing deals, I guarantee you. If I never hear from a buyer's agent, I just get emails. I got news for you. I am more prone, as on the seller's side, to be paying attention to the people that actually pick up the phone and make a connection. Oh, you're real. There's a lot to be said for that. So earnest money. How much and at what risk? There's a lot of agents out there who have this formula, this rule of thumb as to, you know, as how they might guide and advise their buyers with respect to earnest money. Should be 1%, of course, right? Maybe. Should be 4%, maybe. Should be $1,000, maybe. I mean, there's no hard and fast rule. But at the same time, at what risk, what I'm really talking about is, at what point might I make part or all of the earnest money? I'm going to use 2 words, hard. Buyers don't know that, but realtors use that term all the time. But if you're talking to a buyer, we use the word non-refundable. Can I make some of that earnest money non-refundable to the seller immediately? I sure can. I sure can. I make it all of it available to the seller immediately. You accept this contract, I'll go put in the earnest money. As long as you have it in writing in the contract and you direct the title company to do so, they can release it to the sellers immediately. Got to be agreed upon in writing. So you can. What about inspections then? Do I get my earnest money back? No. At what risk? Remember, there's the question. But would that constitute the seller going, oh, I like their style, I'll take their money? Of course they will. Now, is that about the money, about the price of the house at that point? Not, is it? I've just kind of shifted gears. A little bit of money now, maybe, or part of it. Now, can I make that money non-refundable and payable to the seller at another juncture in the escrow process? Sure, I could. As soon as we get through inspections and we've negotiated inspections, well, you know, I'm moving forward. It's the sellers that I'll make it releasable to the seller at that point. Everything, all the inspections are good, or at least satisfactory. If I'm getting a loan, How about the appraisal? Would these things constitute a incentive for the seller to choose your offer over someone else's? They sure would. They sure would. Okay. Appraisal, earnest money appraisal. Again, can I waive the appraisal if I'm given a cash offer? There's no, that's not, there isn't an expected appraisal anyway. If I am looking at waiving an appraisal, I've got to make sure that that person has enough money, which means you as the buyer's agent have to do your due diligence and trying to figure out within a range of what that property is likely to appraise for. If you're having trouble with that, this is not something I play with, because you can put buyers into some serious jeopardy when it comes to money. So what do I want to do? I want to, again, I'm going to start from the beginning and not pretend I don't know the list price. I'm going to go look at that property and try and determine valuations. Because if I'm not going to do this, there is something called an appraisal shortfall. Some people know it as a partial appraisal waiver that basically said, and this is what we just accepted. This was more tenable to our clients on the one with Santan we just closed the other day. The one we accepted was $375 with a $10,000 partial appraisal waiver or a $10,000 appraisal shortfall contingency that basically said if the lender required the appraisal and the property appraised for less than $375, they would give up to $10,000 to try and bridge the gap between that appraisal price and $375. Our calculations were $360, $365. So if it wound up appraising at $360, they were going to get $370. So and they were like, well, that's good. We'll take that. Now, as it turned out better for the seller because the lender just looked at it and said, yeah, we don't need an appraisal for this one. Now, they didn't need an appraisal, not because of what they were thinking the house was worth on paper, but also because the buyers were putting 50% down on the property. You put that much money down on the property, no matter what range in that range that house appraises for, bank is covered. If they've got to foreclose, bank's numbers are covered. So that came out to one of the reasons why you look at how much are they putting down. 3%. It would have, if they were putting 3%, 3.5% down, they would have required an appraisal on that deal. So it makes sense. So inspection, same issue. A lot of sellers don't want inspections, right? If they can help it, they don't want them because they're going to they'd be told, here's your inspection repair request list. Buyers need the inspections. But if buyers are going to look at it and go, well, wait a minute, in the height of a seller's market, when there's multiple offers, there are some people that were waiving inspections. Should you waive inspections? Absolutely not.
Exactly.
Let me put it this way. As a real estate agent, you get yourself in a whole lot of trouble to suggest to waive inspections. As a buyer, you leave that decision up to them. And if they decide to waive inspections, you make sure you get signatures suggesting and that you've actually advised inspections. Cover yourself in that respect. What were people doing? The other question is, can you partially waive inspections? Partially waive inspections? Sure you can. I'm going to make sure that my inspections for the purpose of this contract are going to have nothing to do with cosmetics. I'm only going to be looking at roof, foundation, and major mechanicals. After that, if there's anything else that comes up, I'm a handy person. I can do it myself. Don't care. Okay. Can I say I happen to be a general contractor and I can see the condition of the property. I'm going to waive the inspection on the property improvements and the land itself, but I'm not waiving the inspection period because I want to check HOA rules. I want to check, city rules because I'm going to run a business out of there and I want to make sure it's copacetic. I can do whatever it was I want to use the property specifically for. So can I reduce the inspection period? You better have somebody like Joe Worthy of Foundations Up Inspection on your speed dial and programmed into your phone. You can call and say, Joe, can you get in there before I would say I'm going to do that? And I make that call in advance, or I can limit what I'm going to officially target on the inspections. And that will give the assurance to the seller that you're not here to nickel and dime them. And that can mean a lot to getting your offer accepted, especially if the seller is nervous about certain conditions because they have deferred maintenance. They haven't done it in that property for a long time. And there's things like, the ceiling in the garage has all kinds of water stains because at one point they had, some roof leak problems and they never bothered to fix it. So, okay, so inspections. There we go again. All right, inspection due diligence period. We just talked about that. How about a flexible close of escrow? This you can do, but you gotta be prepared. What do I mean by that? You gotta make a lot of coordinating phone calls, and I mean phone calls, because you gotta make sure everyone's on the same page. Who are you gonna call? Not one of you yelled Ghostbusters.
I was going to, but then I was and then I was like, I didn't want to be that guy.
I love being that guy. A good guy to be. So, okay, so who are you gonna call? You're gonna call your lender, number one, the lender on the deal. Why?
They're the ones who can tell us if we can even close or not.
Well, remember, of course, they've got a lock on the loan that expires at a certain date.
Yeah.
They've got a lock on the loan that expires at a certain date. And if going beyond that date, you need to know what that date is. Going beyond that date for a close of escrow could cost your buyers extension money. I am also a licensed mortgage person with Barrett Financial in 11 states. Just saying. Let me go ahead and let me put this out there. I'm going to put this out there just so you're aware. Barrett Financial, with a couple of the wholesale lenders, we actually have, because we're such a big organization, Barrett Financial loan officers do have free extensions on with some of the wholesale lenders. So that's something to keep in mind and know. All right, that's another bit issue. So we need to know the lock date. We need to know what's going to cost them if they have to actually push it forward. And secondly, we want to do that, but we also want to make sure that if it's a primary owned occupant property, they're signing intent papers that says they're going to occupy the property within 60 days. So depending upon the circumstances, you got to keep that in mind. All right, so lender's number one. The buyer, what are their current living situation? When does their lease end if they're leasing? When do they have to be out of their house if they're selling? Are they staying with relatives? What's the variability and what's the desperation issue involved here? At what point are they absolutely desperate and going to be living in a car, living in a hotel, living in the living room of a relative they don't barely like? So we got to keep that in mind. Can they extend? Does their lease go month to month after their lease is up? Then they've got a possibility there. Can they buy themselves some time? That's important to know. What's the drop dead time they have to be in the new home? Brooks Matchmeyer is our lead listing agent on Snowbird Nation. He talks to sellers all the time. He walks in there and the first question he asks them, just to get them excited about what they're doing: at what date do you need the deposit in your bank account for the sale?
Oh, that's good.
When do you want the cash in your pocket?
When do you want the cash in your pocket? Yeah. When do you want the cash in your pocket? Let's do a backward timeline. Yeah.
And don't forget to tell your escrow officer, because they get so frustrated. What do you mean you
We're
want to close
supposed to
early?
tell them?
What do you mean you want to close late? I didn't get that paper. The addendum or whatever.
Yep. So I can add escrow officer. We got to know the buyer, but then also the seller. Because oftentimes it's the seller's schedule that we're most interested in anyway, because we're trying to get their house, right?
Yeah.
So if we're already armed with the previous individuals, now we can call the listing agent and say, when do they need to move? What's the best closing date for them and why? Now, they're building new construction. When is that house going to be ready for occupancy? Do we know? Now, would it be better to actually move the close of escrow date to just before they're able to take that house? Or would you rather have it a month in advance, do a lease back for a month so that they have the cash in hand if it needs to be seasoned, so that you can actually go through and the closing over there? Right? These are the questions we have to ask. Having that discussion Will that put you up higher on the list of, we're gonna go with those people? Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. So that's really, really, really important. Flexible COE. Now, let me go ahead and put this out there too. In the contract, I always put in section 8 of our contracts, a clause that reads something to the effect of buyer and seller agree to move up close of escrow date if all parties agree and all contingencies are met. What am I saying? I'm saying I've got a close of escrow date in the contract for the Arizona contract, but Arizona attorneys and a lot of escrow officers and title companies do not like the phrase on or before.
I put that on everything.
There have been lawyers involved. You can get yourself in trouble, just saying. So we put in a date, and then we put in a clause in section 8 that says, if buyers and sellers agree that close of escrow will be moved up if all contingencies are met, and everyone, basically if everyone's ready. I can get anyone who wants it. I can get you the actual clause, the exact wording that we use in that. Yeah. So and what we're doing is we're basically saying on or before, but we're putting it in there saying here, you know, we're going to do this because on or before decided by whom.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's just it. If the sellers aren't ready to go, but the buyers are clear to close, they're trying to push it now, and the sellers are like, whoa, slow your roll. You know, and if they're not ready, so basically we're adding that in there. So close of escrow date is important to note there. Possession variance, the same thing. Am I doing post possession? Am I doing pre possession? Well, I understand the contracts for there. Now let me put this: if in the MLS or during your conversation with the listing agent, there is a post possession conversation, don't be lazy. Put the post-possession agreement together in advance and be generous. Send it off. Now, when I say generous, I mean get as close to 0 as you can in terms of days for however long they need. Anything less than 14 days, I recommend a post-possession agreement. Anything more than 14 days, I recommend you do an AAR lease. But if you're going to do this, you know, if you can get as low as you can in the dollar per day, but then if they stay past their welcome, we sting them. I'm just gonna put it there. You know, we'll be generous all the way up to the point. If they stay past their welcome, $500 a day. I don't care, $1,000 a day. In other words, you only get to the day we said we're gonna agree to. After that, you're gonna overstay your welcome. You will be paying through the nose because we're gonna be generous, but we're not generous to be on default. And so if there's a possession variance and you can work that out on the phone with the listing people in advance and kind of go, okay, what's the story? And can my people provide, you know, close and then provide you with that option still? Have you just got yourself that much closer to getting that deal accepted? Yes, don't be lazy and put in section 8. Buyers to execute a post-possession agreement for sellers upon acceptance of contract. I will tell you that on the listing side as a seller's agent, when I see something like that, I will call the agent back and say, I want that now. And the reason I do that is we've been stung where all of a sudden we get the contract accepted. And then we get these post-possession agreements that are unreasonable and unwarranted, and it just kills a deal. Well, let's go ahead and get that all done right up front. If anything, any documents that are actually in the MLS, do them now. While you're writing the offer, get them all done, because full packages are going to make things a whole lot easier for the listing agent to go, I don't have to go chasing this stuff. Done. Do them now. Anything else that needs to be done ahead of time, do it now. So possession variance. HOA addendum. 75, 76, and now 77. 75, 76, and 77 on the third page of the HOA addendum. Have you had that discussion with the buyers in advance? For those of you that don't know, 75, 76, 77 of the HOA addendum, what is that? Transfer fee, capital improvement fee, and any undisclosed fees that nobody knew about in advance.
Yeah.
Okay. And so those 3 fees, they're buyer, seller, or other. And then if it's other, you want to put something else. If this is not in the the documents in the MLS already filled out by the seller and submitted by the listing agent on the MLS, then what do? Our due diligence and prep in advance. Does that mean we're gonna call the HOA? You bet it does. Means we're gonna call the HOA, we're gonna get as many of those numbers as we possibly can. We're gonna have that discussion about worst case scenario based on all the information we found versus best case scenario. And then we're gonna go ahead and mark if it's to our best, if it's to the seller's best interest, can the buyers, and are the buyers willing to mark, for example, buyer on those 3 lines, meaning the buyer's gonna take a responsibility for all 3 of those lines and any fees that might be approached based on those lines. Then I don't care. We don't fill out page one on the HOA of the 3-page document is supposed to be a seller responsibility. We might already give them, here's the numbers as we understand them, if you're good with that. So we might fill out those 3, or I'm going to put in section 8, HOA addendum, lines 76, 77, 75, 76, 77 to be marked buyer. Have I just saved a negotiation point, a discussion for later on? Yep. We got a lot farther down the negotiation path? Yep. Can I do this in advance? Yep. Escalation clause. We talked about this in one of the deals we're doing right now. An escalation clause does not automatically mean I'm going to be running up to the highest number. An escalation clause isn't a clause where we're actually going to try and look at it and say, I am here to play used car salesman, stereotypical used cars. This is the problem, right? So I'm going to look at my pen, for example. An escalation clause is basically designed to give confidence to your buyer that you have integrity. Just put it like that. Confidence to your buyer that you have integrity and that you're trying to educate them on the market. At the same time, you are trying to make sure that the buyer's not overpaying, because remember your fiduciary duty is also to help protect their money. I mean, cover their ass. I mean, wait a minute, there's 7 of them. But I often look at it like this. Evo, how much would you give me for this pen?
$1.
You give me $1. Okay. If Brooks is ready to give me $1.10 for the pen, what might you give me?
I mean, I'll give you $1 until he actually,
11.
I'll give you $1 until he actually comes up here and gives me $1.10.
Okay. And so what I will do is like, okay, $1. All right. He's going to give me $1.10. If somebody were willing to give me $1.11, would you give me $1.12? Maybe. And so,
It depends on if it's worth that. I'd have to look it up to see how much it's worth. Not worth it.
we've already done a valuation. The question is, what can you get it for? So, what I'm saying here is this. Joe's already said to me that his highest dollar, he's going to stop playing this game. Joe's going to give me $27.50 for it.
Enjoy, Joe.
But what we're actually saying is, I don't want to overpay for it, but I want it. I don't want to overpay for the house, but I want it. And if I'm going to get into a bidding war, I'm going to ask Joe, for example, Joe, what's the absolute positive highest amount of money are you willing to give me for that pen? And if somebody goes 1 penny over, you're out. What's $27.50? So if somebody else wants to offer me $27.51, he's comfortably going, I'm out, I'm done. So when we start having the conversation about evaluations, we've done the valuation of the house. We've looked at it and we said, all right, based on our CMA, based on looking at multiple artificial intelligence databases, because we look at a minimum of 2. And I don't mean Zillow.
But it's so accurate.
Aren't you the guy that said realtor as good as another and Jersey Mike's is the same as Subway? No, the estimates are astrology.
That's real too.
Just kidding. This is your director of marketing. Barrett. So So, but we look at that, and we go, look, and I will tell you, the two artificial intelligence databases that we examine are RPR and House Canary. And occasionally we will look at HomePop. But from those two, plus our own CMA work, we're going to come up with a valuation of the house. And of course, a lot of our valuations are going to be ranges. And so we're going to suggest, based on our best guess, we think the appraisal ought to come in between here and here. So then the question is, what do you want to offer and what's in your capacity to offer? Because if it comes in over the appraisal, or depending on what we're doing with the appraisal contingency specifically, we've got to have extra cash to do so. And if we come in with an appraisal shortfall contingency, for example, $10,000, the listing agent, especially if it's one like me who's going to do my due diligence, I'm not only going to ask to see proof that you can have enough funds to close the loan. I'm going to want to see proof that you have the extra money to cover the shortfall should it happen. So I'm going to look at it and say, all right, on our escalation clause is going to read, in the event of multiple offers, buyer is willing to pay. And if and our current rule of thumb is if it's under $500,000, it's $1,001. And if it's over $500,000, it's $5,001. Buyer is willing to pay $1,001 above the highest bona fide offer, not to exceed a maximum of $2,750. You know, for example, $2,750. And copy of full copy of bona fide offer to accompany counteroffer. And I'm going to tell our buyers at that point, our clients, what we're trying to do is two things. Number one, I'm trying to protect your money. We went in, for example, at $489. I got it for $489. But the last couple of deals we tried to do with that particular buyer, we got shut out in multiple counteroffers and multiple offer scenarios. We got shut out. So we're like, okay, here's the next management of expectations. Here's the next strategy we're going to do. So we basically prepped it and said, okay, we got to go in with some escalation clause material here. And we did, but we still got shut out higher than what they were willing to do on the previous properties. And so we're going to say, you know, so basically what we're going to say is, if we get a counteroffer, and here's the interesting thing, if we get a counteroffer, then we know we are in exactly the position we want to be in, the last person standing. Now we've got the sole attention of the seller. If we get a multiple counteroffer scenario, meaning there's more than one counteroffer going out, then we've got a whole different psychology going on. But if we're the last group, the only people standing in the current conversation, which is exactly where we want to be, then we can have a better conversation. And so we're looking at that very, very specific. So escalation clause, it's not about let's run the dollar figure up as high as we can because we want to collect a higher commission. That's the perspective a lot of clients often pick, that if they don't completely trust you. So the whole idea of an escalation clause isn't about running the number up. It's about training and educating your customer so that they understand what kind of a market we're really in. Because this is also a very highly educational for those people who haven't bought a house since a buyer's market and think they shouldn't buy at list price. They think they should buy less than list price, or somebody who doesn't quite understand, I don't buy anything list price. Well, in the height of the seller's market a couple of years ago, we had properties going 30% higher than list price, 40%. I think our highest was we had one property go 65% higher than list price.
Really wanted that house.
They really wanted that property. Where was listed for? That's possible too. And thank you very much. So, okay. So as escalation clause, you know, when do we want to use it? How do we want to use it? These are all important issues. How about seller incentives? Seller incentives. All things being equal, I will tell you again, Brooks Mashmeyer is one of the people that he's our lead attention seeker. And he will actually tell you that if you want to get noticed, you have to get attention, or the other way around.
You want to get attention, you gotta get noted.
Okay, see, and so taking a page,
one, half the.
right, taking a page from that book. We would, you know, a lot of times, especially in a multiple offer scenario, one of the things we're actually going to do is we're going to put something in there to try and get attention. So on the, you know, section 8 might read something like, on the day, 3 days before closing, buyer to have $150 of seller's favorite pizzeria food arriving at house, meaning it's for the people that are helping to move. You know, beer and pizza, right? Isn't that the standard?
Yeah, that's the cost here.
You write that in there? Why not?
America.
Hey, tell them about the green M&Ms in the contract.
Let's hear it.
Van Halen had in their contract to make sure that people, they actually read the contract. They said there is to be a bowl of M&Ms with all the green ones removed. And if they went there and it wasn't there, they would trash the hotel, but they would use one stage. But you can put anything in a contract.
Yeah.
And if they're agreeing to it, they're agreeing to it. As long as it's legal, and it's legal to request that.
I guess that's true.
You're paying for a service. They have
So-
all kinds of.
So am I gonna have gifts? I'm gonna include gift certificates to for packing boxes from U-Haul. Maybe. You know, you can actually go out of your way to be creative here. So, you know, the stuff that's gonna capture the attention of the sellers. Because we're required by law to present all offers. And if all the offers are all generically the same except for the sales price, what are we typically doing? All we're doing is reading the sales price to the sellers, right? But if we have something just a little bit more unique in it, and that catches the attention, you're going to find that people will go, oh, wow, isn't that creative? And you might at least get a call back at that point, especially in that mode of, we got way too many offers. How do we make ours stand out? All right, finally, listing agent incentive. I'm not talking about paying the listing agent. I don't want to get responsible for issues with RESPA or anything else. Those incentives are a little bit hard, but I am going to go ahead and say this, even though we have Debbie Rogers with Lawyer's Title in the room. She recognizes this as much as anybody else, that if we're in a multiple offer scenario, we all know that most real estate agents have what we call vanity relationships with their favorite title companies, right? We do. Snowbird Nation, we primarily rely on 2 different title companies, Lawyers being one of them. When we do that, we will put in our MLS listing in the private remarks for a smoother transaction. Escrow has already been opened with David Bombaci at Lawyer's Title, and oftentimes we'll even have them open up. You know, we'll call them in advance. Give me an escrow number. So let's actually open the file. So we're not, you know, basically made out to be liars. But what are we doing? We're basically saying, here's our vanity relationship. And if you want to catch my attention as the listing agent, you're going to pay attention to that clause, because all other things being equal, who's the listing agent going to go with? People when they can feed their resource team, right? It is what it is. Now, I have had people, and I've even done this. RESPA 3.2 actually suggests that that buyer gets to choose the title company, and if the seller wants to insist on the title company, then the seller is going to pay the fees for the buyer's title. This is true. However, you can be right and lose the contract. Question is, you want to feed your ego, feed your pocket. And in this market, you're going to have that conversation with the buyer and say, look, it's this title company, XYZ. I've done a quick bit of research on them. They're not fly by night, an internet company that looks like they just, put up the website yesterday. They're a reputable company. Do you have a serious reason why we want to put yours specifically in the contract? If they don't have, most buyers, let's face it, most buyers don't have a relationship with a title company. They rely on the agent. And if I'm calling in this variable, one that's actually being more represented on the seller's market side, they've got multiple offers. I'm going to say, I'm even going to call the listing agent. That's going to be part of our conversation when we talk story. How close are you with this particular title? Is it going to make or break a deal? Are you going to counter? Are you going to basically send me a counter that's, I may come up with a couple of reasons and, to try to push a little bit to get our title company accepted, because as representing the buyer, and we've done it. There have been times that we have actually won that argument. There are obviously ways. Well, the seller's agent will say, well, they're selling theirs and they're buying another one that they're buying from. They're using this title company. And response is always, so you're telling me your title company is that incompetent and unable to actually get the title work for the sale, and so they can't do it both? Why would I want to use that title company that you just expressed their income? And we've won those arguments. Not always, but we've won those arguments. But the point is, you can be right, or you can win the contract. And you need to know at what point you can push. But remember, vanity relationships exist between title companies and realtors. And if you're trying to get your contract accepted and the listing agent has multiple offers and they're all approximately the same, there are little things that are going to trigger psychologically in the listing agent's head. And one of them is going to be, are they using our title company? Because we put it in the MLS and I got to feed my resource team. So we want to pay attention to those things.
Like there are times too that, we'll open it and actually pull a pre-list because maybe they're concerned about, back taxes, child support problems that they can get jump on. And then,
Yep.
We've done a lot of work on that. So.
Yep. Retitle work. Yeah. I mean, when I say we're going to open up, it's already been started. We also, especially if we suspect, and we have had those deals.
When inventory is low, check your title. It goes hand in hand.
There's a reason for that. All right, reconnaissance. We've already been talking about this at length. Reconnaissance, ARC, right? The R in ARC stands for reconnaissance. Reconnaissance is a mission to obtain information by visual observation or other detection methods about the activities and resources. This is mostly a military term, but it basically might be described as going above and beyond with due diligence. Talk story with the listing agent. Do your due diligence with the neighborhood. When you're out with a buyer and you go and they go look at the house and they have any indication, any issues with the neighborhood whatsoever, take those. And remember, you can't talk crap of any kind that might look like you're trying to knocking on the door and saying, hey, what do you think of the neighborhood? And then just shut up. Because they can say anything they want. Yep, you can't. They're not licensed. They're not under the same restrictions your license restricts you with. So by all means, we want to actually start looking at that. Remember, of course, that advocacy is friendly. When you reach out to listing agents, we are, depending upon the variable market, if we're in a seller's market versus a buyer's market, sometimes we as agents, we can be hard-nosed and really nasty. We can be. But if you are on the opposite side, meaning seller's market, you represent a buyer. You want to take a hard approach, never going to get a deal done. House sellers to give the agent permission or not to discuss other offers with other buyers' agents. Now, it's not always to the advantage of the seller to do so. In a buyer's market, even reaching list price, you don't necessarily want to go telling everybody what the numbers are. In a seller's market, when you are above list price, yeah, I want that permission because my whole point is if I'm going to ask my sellers at the very beginning, what's your goal? Is your goal to maximize the dollar figure? Most people think that's exactly the only goal out there. Maximize it. For a family that's going to take this house and treat it with as much care, love, and respect that you did. That means a lot to the legacy of the mindset legacy of the people selling. And so, is there a way to trump the highest price off? If I'm the buyer's agent and I know what their goal is, and I know that I can kind of get to them with the empathy and the sympathy side of things, I'm going to play that to the hill. Play the people, not the paper. And so, line 154. Mr. or Miss listing agent, what can you tell me about the property? What can you tell me about it? Do you have any current offer? Do that. The people that are going to say, I can't tell you that, either their license was born in a buyer's market and they've been around a while, or they were trained by somebody who was. Because we've already discussed in a buyer's market, we don't necessarily want to tell them what the offers are. And at the same time, line 154 in a seller's market, I'm going to actually suggest that to them. And even if we're in a seller's market, I'm going to say, well, and remember, of course, when I'm asking these questions, you have to own the tone, because if you come across as being sarcastic, if you come across as being confrontational, this will not work. The other person will back off and hang up on them. So you want to ask the question, can you tell me what your highest offer is? Can't tell you that. Can I ask you a quick question? 2 years ago, I think it's 2 years ago now. 2 years ago, they changed this listing contract and added line 154 to it. 2 years ago, that line wasn't in there. That changed, and that was actually groundbreaking for Arizona real estate. That permission to discuss offers, that is groundbreaking, because that allows me to actually say, my highest offer is, and these are the conditions. Can you beat it? You can't beat it. I'm going to save yourself some time, because here's where we're at. But other agents, I can't tell you that. Well, I'm going to say, well, did you fill out the listing contract yourself? Just curious. Okay. You did it a couple of weeks ago? Great. And this is usually where someone's going to start telling you, I've been in the business for 35 years. Okay. Yeah, you actually told me more than you think you told me. And at the same time, I'm going to say, well, how did you mark line 154? Did you have a discussion with the seller about line 154? Are you able to do so? Now, I'm also going to flip the script on this one. I'm a seller's agent for the moment. Agents are familiar now, 2 years later, with line 154. I just got an offer from Frank here on one of our properties, and Frank came in with the offer. I don't even care what the offer's at. Let's say we can be $5,000 below list price. It can be at list price. It can be $5,000, $20,000 over list price. It doesn't matter. But what matters is he's my only offer. Some people might find what I'm about ready to say a little bit in the gray. There's your disclaimer right there. There's your disclaimer. There's your disclaimer right there. Line 154. Hey, Frank, I got your offer here. I need to ask you a quick question before I go and have this discussion with the sellers. I have to ask you just one question. I have to just emphasize the if here. If I had an offer that, let's say, was, I don't know, $20,000 higher than what your current offer is, what would your clients be prepared to do? And shut up. If I hypothetical, you just go like lawyers speak, go to hypothetical. Remember, I have that PhD. You're smart. So, all right, what would your clients be prepared to do? Now, let me go ahead and tell you. I've never had a real estate agent come back to me with, do you? Never.
Really?
They don't, they're automatically seeing this problem. So they're already working it through in their head. They've already gone.
My first question would be like, so do you have that on paper? Like,
They're just assuming it.
So now,
So now you should ask, do you?
and if you did, what would my response be? Look, I'm just asking a hypothetical,
okay, hypothetically, do you have a real offer?
meaning I'm not going to answer your question, right?
No.
And I'm not going to answer it on purpose for the reason I don't. I have one off. Okay, so then what's going to happen? I get one of two responses. Remember, we did 120 deals, and 2 years ago, we did about 120 deals, and a number of times we went through this, and it works the same every time. And they're going to say to me one of two things. Wow, look, we're already at our top dollar figure, but my folks, and then they're going to try and make the case about why we should give it to their people, try and solicit the sympathy aspect of things. What do I know at that point? I know I don't have any room to counter on price, but anything else I can get out of them if my sellers need it. Right? Or or the other thing that's gonna happen, it's gonna, I just say, hey, $20,000, what would your clients be prepared to do? Give me a half hour. Ding, here comes the transaction desk. So I can now call my sellers and I can say, look, I got two offers. They're from the same people. One's $20,000 higher than the first one. Which one do you want to talk about first? These are the things we teach in negotiation and contract management, because a lot of times the other side isn't asking the right questions, but they're making a lot of inferences. They're making a lot of assumptions. So we got to be very careful when we are looking at those kinds of. So reconnaissance. Now, here's the other kicker. Not all real estate agents live in 2023. Last year, we had an offer that I couldn't understand why I couldn't get any response back from the listing agent, and we were representing the buyer. Turns out, and I wasn't getting any responses back to them until like late in the evenings. Here in the Valley, we still have real estate agents using landlines, not cell phones, and actual voice recording machines that are not accessible.
What's a landline?
You just type by your seat.
Pagers.
They did not ask me to fax anything, but I will tell you that, and I will, and to give fairness where, give the devil their due. They did live in, Sun Lakes.
You expected.
But when we talk about reaching out from a communication perspective, and we talked about this a little while ago, telephone, leave a voicemail if they're not answering the phone. And even if they do answer the phone, send a text message and an email. All three are important because we don't know what the preference of the real estate agent who's on the other side is, and you want to keep those lines of communication open. So the more flexible you are, don't make people adapt to you, because, and the same thing needs to be said for the potential client. Now, Snowbird Nation, we, as you might well guess, based on our name, we do actually work a lot with that particular niche, with a niche of people that come down as weather chasers, and for part of the season and go away for part of the season and looking for vacation homes and things like this. A lot of them aren't on the computer, and a lot of them, we've got, and I know Brooks has done this a number of times, where he'll actually make appointments and show up with everything printed out, sign here, and let's go through it all. Because that's the mentality and the technological advancement some of these folks are. They just don't care about technology. And that's okay. if you're prepared to actually respond to that. And a lot of us aren't. So I need to actually put that out there. Not all agents live in 2023, so make sure that however we're communicating with the agents, and that goes also with the clients, that we're caught up really well with them. Compile a winning offer. We've already kind of talked a lot about this as well. Be as complete as. Any docs in the MLS, do them while you're doing the offer. The spuds, the HOA, the MCA, the clue, any other addenda that's attached. Does everyone know what those are? I know we have some new people here, new real estate agents here.
What is MCA?
The market conditions analysis. That basically says that in a variable market like we're in, if they buy the house today and it significantly dropped in price, like in the next 6 months, they can't come back and blame you.
Never heard it abbreviated MCA.
Oh, okay. Anything else on that one? Make sure you've got agency, the purchase contract, post possession, if that's already been part of the discussion. Anything that's been part of the discussion, do in advance. Don't be lazy, because I'll tell you what, as the listing agent, and sometimes a busy listing agent, because when we've got a lot of stuff going on, somebody who sends me the entire package means I don't have to go chase other documents down later, is telling me that they are already on the ball. I'm more prone to want to work with that person if we can, if at all possible, if we can. Final key. Follow up by all methods. Stay in constant contact. Anytime you send something, keep everyone in the loop. That includes your escrow officer and your lender. Both sides. And if you have a paperwork shepherd, I'm sorry, some of you refer to them as transaction coordinators. If you have a paperwork shepherd, make sure that transaction coordinator is completely in the loop on every step of the way. It will save you tons. Worth every dollar you will ever pay that person.
Shout out to Megan Brewer, if anybody uses her. She's great.
She's awesome. She really is. You're here. Drink for me.
Yeah, right.
Okay. I think that brings us questions. What questions do we have today that I might be able to address?
Yeah, I don't really have any questions, but as a new agent, I think it's very informative.
Good.
I would like to see pictures of you living in the truck.
This is true.
I don't
want receipts.
He's got two locations. He's either chained to his desk or living in the truck. Between, yeah.
Right.
Anybody on Zoom got questions?
Now I might take a minute to add something.
You may.
Okay. The typical lifestyle of real estate agent, especially when we first start up, it's overwhelming. You already went through an overwhelming amount of process just to get here. And then you actually got to do it. It's insane. Like everything that Mike does takes an ungodly amount of time. And I got the patience of a bird. So I don't know how he does it. I don't care how he does it. I'm focused on what I do, So if you guys want the tools and the abilities of a Mike Searcy, or want to know more about, contract negotiations and stuff, you can always join Snowbird Nation. We have a split mentality, left brain, right brain. People are really good at what they're focused on, and you will be successful at whatever you focus on, whether that's TC work, back end work, but no leads, no job, right? That starts and stops everything. Without that, this boat don't run, right? So I love lead generation. That's what I'm focused on. That's what we did this book up. I can teach you how to lead generate, do your thing, and just throw Mike the meal to cook in the kitchen. Don't even worry about it. I went down the river. I went down the Colorado River for 5 days, kayaking 70 plus miles with my girlfriend. I just closed a deal. This is how that happens. Letting go of that technocrat stuff to people who actually like it. Fantastic. All day, every day. I'd rather have half of something than 100% of nothing. Right?
Yeah.
That makes sense now, because when you guys, I emailed you. I was like, oh, is Brooks your tech guy? And then it's like, no. Like,
It's not like stupid videos to get attention.
that's what I do. They just
We
ping
have some pictures from this weekend, I think.
Oh, boy.
Yes, I think we should, we should post some of them dressed up like a lobster for the Little Mermaid.
Oh, were you the lobster? Oh, okay.
Yeah, in fact,
I gotta see that.
for those of you that haven't, go look at the Barrett real estate Facebook page.
Yeah, Barrett
The
Real
back
Estate
office.
Agents.
Yeah, Evo put together a really nice video compilation of what we did this last Saturday. We hosted a Little Mermaid. We rented out the entire movie theater in Norterra, North Phoenix.
We were creating advocates, not just clients, advocates. Huge difference.
Showed a premiere version for free. About 150 people showed up, families and all, to see the Little Mermaid. Had a big photo thing, and Brooks dressed up as the Little Mermaid. I mean,
But they did have a Little Mermaid there. They had.
They did.
yeah, same one that was in the video that we just saw.
Well, real quick before everybody dips out.
Nobody has to leave if
Oh.
you want lunch, because lunch is
Yes.
here.
I do want to say I appreciate Mike for coming
You're welcome.
down over there. Appreciate everybody showing up today. People that aren't here, aren't with us yet. But yes, there's definitely lunch. And then also don't forget, guys, later today, everybody is totally welcome. We're doing Top Golf at 4:30, literally right down the street. So we'll have drinks, food. So come over there, hang out.
So lunch here.
Yeah.
Dinner there.
We're gonna fill you with food. So, but yes, I appreciate everybody coming. And then mix, mingle, eat the rest of that food. and
Show hot dog, huh?
Go for Top Golf.
Oh, yeah, this whole thing is lunchtime, sponsored by Foundations of Inspections and Lawyers Title.
People on Zoom, too bad, so sad.
So,
But come to Top Golf.
but yeah,
That's the part.
grab some food. Let's chat.
Thanks. Good on. Yeah, shit, you're not- that's the odd- good idea. I'll tell you.
I didn't want it, but let's put it.
Well, that's where you start. The first one's always the hardest one.
Hey, Frank, would you turn the light on?
Okay, great, sure.
Light switch.
There you go. Thanks.
But that's the.